Imagine all the feelings of being intoxicated, without any of the parts that would actually make it enjoyable. Now imagine feeling like that every single day, even though you've been sober for years. Imagine trying to function as a normal member of society, going to work, caring for your children, attending a PTA meeting, all while you feel like you've been microdosing a bad batch without any justifiable reason. Defined as a long-lasting and potentially permanent syndrome characterized by spontaneous reoccurrence of perceptual disturbances which are reminiscent of those generated while a subject was intoxicated with hallucinogens. Hallucinogen Persisting Perceptual Disorder, or HPPD as I'll be referring to it from now on, is a condition believed to impact only around 4% of those who have actually done hallucinogenic drugs. Although the truth is that how many people are afflicted is something for which we have no idea for whatsoever. HPPD is a recognized disorder in the DSM-5, ostensibly caused by drugs, or at the very least, not able to be explained through any other cause. HPPD impairs visual processing and daily functioning, consisting of lasting feelings of intoxication, visuals, or impairment as a result from a drug or substance, said drugs not being limited specifically to classic hallucinogens. While everything I've said thus far is all well and good, the combined lack of research and profound lack of professional literacy surrounding this condition have led to a myriad of issues ranging from misdiagnosis to stigma and an almost non-existent support system for those who suffer from this condition daily. Just to get this out of the way, I believe I've had a mild form of HPPD for over 20 years. And yes, I did a lot of drugs back in the day. I say I believe I have it because even though I've been to a dozen mental health professionals in that time, not one of them has ever heard of it. And this isn't just my story. When I was doing my background research and asking people in HPPD support groups for their input, this is a story that came up over and over and over again. And each time I read the words, I could feel the frustration and sometimes even hopelessness of the people on the other end of my computer screen. They were emotions which mirrored my own all those years ago. I remember looking for answers in the only place that a 19-year-old uninsured person in America could at that specific point in time and place in this country. In a building full of people with much more profound disorders than anything I was dealing with. But it isn't like I knew that at the time. Was I dealing with some rare neurological condition, a brain tumor? Or was I no different than the schizophrenic who's sitting across from me? Am I stuck like this forever? Will it get worse? All of those emotions, all of those questions were ones that, in the years between then and now, it was exclusively on me to cope with and answer. They prescribed me medication I didn't need, which only served to make things worse, because even a renowned psychiatrist didn't know what he was treating in the first place. All of this in an era before Facebook existed, and the support groups of today may have shed some faint light on my situation. So what is the situation I keep talking about? What does life look like for a person with HPPD? And for that, I can really only relate to you the specifics about my own experience, try to compare and contrast with diagnostic criteria and from what I've read from others. Personally, I've always had a scientific mind. I like to deal in facts which can be supported by evidence, but having studied psychology my entire adult life, I know full well that the human brain defies our current ability to test a theory, reach a conclusion, and duplicate results. Whenever we talk about neurological or psychiatric issues, there's always a plethora of blurred lines and unsatisfying answers. I made peace with the fact that not everyone is going to be happy with this mini documentary before I ever start on the script, but I still want to apologize in advance if anyone feels like my experience is too radically different from their own to get any real benefit from this description. And now let's get this party started by talking about the visual symptoms. While HPPD is poorly understood, and some of what I'm about to list off can be attributed to other issues, there are a handful of things which are consistently reported. Things like visual snow, which sometimes takes the appearance of static on an old TV screen, or in my case, presents with an almost ghostly color, rather like this. Seeing halos, tracers, and after images. The floaters that almost all of us see can be more intense and downright bothersome. Changes in depth perception are not all uncommon. Blue field and toptic phenomena, characterized by the appearance of tiny bright dots moving quickly along squiggly lines in the visual field, has been widely reported as well. And all of this before we get to the more generalized collection of horrors that are classified as psychedelic-like effects, such as fractal kaleidoscope patterns, faces, breathing walls, moving, wavy, or shaky text, flashing and strobing lights. Thankfully, most of which being things I don't usually deal with. But those are just the visual symptoms. Sadly, there's a whole other layer of this which needs to be covered before we can move on. Frequent headaches, acute neck pain, unequal pupils, and ringing in the ears are all common physical symptoms. Then you have the general state of confusion, anxiety, and depersonalization to round things out. All of these symptoms can wax and wane depending on anything from the amount of sleep you've had to caffeine intake, stress, or for no discernible reason at all. And just in case the point hasn't been made thus far, it objectively isn't a pleasant thing to deal with. You might think right now that this is a good PSA to stay away from drugs. Historically, the leading theories and most of the information you'll find on this condition claim that hallucinogenic drugs are how this happens. Maybe even feel like those dirty drug users deserve their fate. Unfortunately, this subject may or may not be as clear-cut as one with that worldview may be comfortable with. Because although research is yet to find any direct evidence to back up these claims, there are plenty of people who have stated things as seemingly innocuous as antibiotics or antidepressants have been responsible for the onset of their symptoms. Indeed, selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, SSRIs, a frontline antidepressant used in treating a wide range of ailments, have been shown to potentially cause side effects ranging from psychosis to all manner of visual disturbances, including full-on hallucinations, leading many to wonder where the line is drawn between drugs which can and drugs which cannot cause HPPD. There is a certain language in a lot of HPPD literature to suggest that perhaps it isn't really about the drug itself or why you were taking it, but more about the effect that it has on you. If a Tylenol could cause you to start tripping balls, perhaps even that would be a possible trigger for this condition. Sadly, the aforementioned notion that it's only an illness which impacts those who use illicit drugs, along with the opinion that drug users deserve their fate, are a large part of the reason that the subject remains so understudied and those answers still elude us. It should be obvious by now that a lack of understanding on this subject is a bad thing. Even if you are of the opinion that illicit drug use is the sole culprit here, and you are firmly in the camp of, well, they bought the ticket, they need to take the ride, the question then becomes, how long do you feel like a person who smoked weed one time should be punished? It's not like this is a common or well-known risk of a drug that's now legal in a third of the country, after all. When you realize that a person can have this disorder to the point that they can't drive because of the visual disturbances, or that those afflicted can have much harder time socializing or forming meaningful connections in both their private and professional lives, at what point do you feel like they deserve some relief? Is my 20 years of sobriety enough to let me off the hook? If the science one day becomes clear that something as innocent as an antibiotic could cause this illness, would that change your mind? Or would you compartmentalize any feelings of empathy you might have, keeping them reserved only for those you feel are the most deserving? We've entered an era where social media feeds are flooded with the possible benefits of hallucinogenic drugs, all while being somewhat lax on telling their viewers how they're to afford the professional administration of said drugs in a nation where mental health care access is damn near third world. This is how the wellness industry has proliferated in the first place, which has seen a sharp rise in the number of people using unproven and unregulated methods to self-medicate. Bad reactions are bound to ensue. Tragedy is bound to happen. As I said in my gatekeeping video, which I will link to down below, all people are deserving of a basic amount of empathy. Mental health issues are commonplace in America today, and most of us share common threads no matter what the specific diagnosis is, or what the cause happens to be. These issues can oftentimes be debilitating, and no matter how we individually or collectively feel about the various issues of the world, the point I'm going to make here is something that we should all be able to agree is an objective fact. Absolutely nothing is gained by simply leaving people to suffer. What people need when faced with a condition that turns their lives upside down is guidance, a pathway towards putting things right side up again. As a person who's been disabled for 2 decades, I want nothing more than to feel like I'm being productive. Not because the world has successfully shamed me into it, or because I'll starve to death otherwise, but because human beings innately want to feel like they've made a mark in the world. People want to feel like they matter, and have done things which contribute, and a lot of people with HPPD are in a place which is conducive to that. This isn't a condition which only impacts the stereotypical 1990s movie junkie. It doesn't require repeat drug use or some downward spiral which would have stood as some kind of foreshadowing to the dangerous path they were on. This is a condition for which the full breadth of causes and degree of severity are so under-researched that you might actually get more information about it from this YouTube video than from a licensed therapist. And I say that as a person who rails against thinking of YouTube as a valid source of factual information. I'm going to wrap this up by talking about my experience. My HPPD did become less bothersome over the years. Now, I don't really know why. I'm guessing maybe I acclimated to it. Part of me thinks the feeling like you're detached from reality just becomes your new reality after a while. It doesn't do much to facilitate living a normal life, though, even though it does cut down on the episodes of anxiety and depression one might have from constantly feeling like their mind is slipping away from them. Where I'm at with it today is, well, you see me smiling right now. I never got back to feeling normal. I have no idea how much of that is the HPPD, how much is the panic disorder, the PTSD, or the ocular migraines I started dealing with roughly 2 years ago. But I've learned to appreciate the fact that I'm still fighting the good fight here. I still feel some anger when I wonder if my issues would be as bad today as they are if the professionals I went to knew what was actually going on with me all those years ago. But anger is a waste, and ultimately no one really wants to see it long term. And so I smile. There is no recognized treatment for HPPD, and research into finding potential solutions is still chronically underfunded. With medication having a tendency to make symptoms worse, therapy for the condition generally focuses on symptom management. The general idea being, we might not be able to treat visual snow or tracers, but we might be able to train you to be less anxious about them. The light at the end of the tunnel here is that for most people who deal with HPPD, their symptoms will alleviate some over time. How much time that is, and whether or not that will be the case for you in specific, are questions that no one can answer. The most damage to people put on the bravest of faces, because in a time and place in which mental health care might as well be the Wild West, a lot of people have to put on the face which helps their physical survival, even when it's at odds with what they need mentally and emotionally. We still are in a world where we can talk about our mental health issues openly due to various stigmas associated with the subject. And more often than not, that concept does as much to hold down those who are struggling than the underlying issues themselves. Nowhere else is this more clear than when we're having a conversation about a disorder that has been known to us for decades, but still has such a profound lack of professional literacy surrounding it. So I hope you found this video to be informative. I'll apologize again if you felt like I left anything out or I wasn't clear enough here. I do all of this by myself, from the script to the research, recording, video editing, trying to promote these videos in relevant places, and I have my own disabilities to work around. It is my hope, though, that I did a good enough job to add to the conversation and spread some awareness, and hopefully compel you to hit that like and subscribe button and give me the encouragement needed to keep making videos like this. If there's anything you want to add to the conversation or any suggestions you have for the next topic I should cover, leave a comment down below. Until next time.